Next is separation of powers. This means that the organs of government must operate separately. That no one organ of government has power greater than the other. That is what we mean by separation of powers. Now, we shall be talking about separation of powers and checks and balances. While separation of powers simply means that no one organ of the government has powers greater than the other. Checks and balances, on the other hand, means that one organ of the body serves as a check to the other organ of the government to make sure that the excesses are curbed. Now, we talk about representative government. What is a representative government? This is used to describe persons or assemblies who have been freely elected. A government is said to be representative if those in government were duly elected by the masses. Then it is a government that is representing the masses. Let us quickly talk about means of establishing representative government. There are a number of means. We shall be considering 4 of them. First, free elections. Yes, there must be free election for a government to be representative. The next is press freedom, and followed by informed and educated electorates. It is only when the electorates are properly informed and educated that they would know the need to go and vote. Of course, vote their representative in government. The next means to establish representative government is independent electoral commission. Yes, there must be a body that conducts election, announces election results, and of course articulates complaints of election or complaints after election. Advantages. That is advantages of a representative system of government. 1. Decisions are made by the majority. 2. Citizens are interested in their country. They are interested in their country because they are part of those who elected their representative. So they are interested in what is happening in the country. Again, it recognizes the right of people. A representative government recognizes the rights of those who have elected them into elected positions. What about the disadvantages of representative government? We shall consider just 2. 1. Citizens may misuse their freedom of speech. And if this freedom of speech is misused to malign government officials, then it becomes counterproductive. Again, that is one of the second disadvantage, is that government may be too slow to make decisions because consultations will have to be made. Every member of the society would have to air their view before a decision is taken. So such rigmarole will make it very difficult to make especially a very important decision in the government, especially in cases of emergencies. We shall now be talking about political participation. What does political participation mean? It means taking active part in politics. Participating actively in politics simply means political what? Participation. Forms of political participation. What are the forms of political participation? We shall consider 3. Universal adult suffrage. That is, that all members of the society who are adults and qualified participate in election or politics. Again, registration. And finally, party system. Yes, there should be a party system, whether one party system, 2-party system, or multiple party system that organizes and articulates the thoughts and intention of a group of persons in a society. The next is the purpose of political participation. Why do people participate in politics? 1. To make the form of government democratic. When people participate in politics, when people elect their representative, the government that comes into power becomes a democratic one because the government comes into power through due process. The second is to ensure peace and stability. If people participate in politics, everything happens right under their nose. No one goes home feeling aggrieved. No one goes home feeling he has been cheated on. So there is peace and stability, because all the processes were laid bare. They were part of those who made decisions affecting their lives. Again, change of government is done peacefully. When people participate in government, at the expiration of a particular government, the next government enters peacefully because people have sufficiently participated. The next is people know their rights and duties. When people participate in politics, they are sufficiently and actively aware of what they are supposed to do, and of course their benefits as citizens of the country or of the state. Let us talk about centralization. Centralization. What does it mean? This is power concentrated at the center. When power is concentrated at the center, we talk about centralization. What are the advantages of centralization? National unity is fostered. When power is concentrated, it makes for national unity. It is cheap to run when power is concentrated in the middle. Again, a centralized government helps in preventing tribalism and unhealthy rivalry among various ethnic groups, because power is concentrated in the middle. So there is no need for unhealthy rivalry. Of course, there are a number of disadvantages. What are they? There is little opportunity for participation in politics. Yes, those in the rural areas or at the grassroots do not have all it takes to participate because power is concentrated in the center. Again, the government is far from the people. This, of course, takes from the first one. And finally, it may lead to dictatorship. Decentralization. It's possible to conclude that decentralization is the flip side of centralization. Yes, in decentralization, division of powers between the central government and its component parts is expressed. So when powers are decentralized, it is distributed between the central government and, of course, its component parts. Advantages. What would you think are the advantages of a decentralized government, or a government where powers are decentralized? One, as you may guess, it prevents dictatorship. Secondly, it brings government nearer to the people. And finally, it encourages massive participation. We shall now be talking about delegated legislation. This is the transfer of power of legislation from the parliamentary to the executive authorities. When such is done, we say legislation has been delegated. The next is form of delegated legislature. We have order in council, that is prerogative orders and proclamation. That's the power exercised, for instance, by the Queen. Again is provisional orders, followed by bylaws. Laws made by the local authorities fall under delegated legislature. Let's quickly talk about advantages of delegated legislature. One, it reduces the burden of the parliament. The parliament will have less to think about, since the powers to legislate on a number of matters have been delegated to other authorities. Second, need for quick action during emergency. So when there is an emergency, one will not want to wait until the Senate, for instance, or the House of Representatives, or the National Assembly, in the case of Nigeria, convenes before a decision is taken, especially in cases of emergency. And finally, technicality of the subject matter of legislation. If the matter upon which legislation is to be taken is a technical matter, then other bodies other than members of the House of Assembly may be invited to take care of such matter. So these are some of the advantages of delegated legislature. Let's now talk about the disadvantages of delegated legislature. One, it violates the principle of separation of powers. And of course, as we said before, separation of powers has got to do with the idea of each organ of the government acting independently. But of course, when some powers to legislate is delegated to, for instance, the executive arm of government, then the principle of separation of powers has been violated. Next is that powers may be abused. The power so delegated to the legislature, or rather to other arms of the government, may be